I think we can all agree, right off the bat, that Harry Potter is so much more than just wands and spells. It's really about the human experience, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. When you strip away all that magical stuff, the Quidditch, the fantastic beasts, what you're left with are characters facing some pretty relatable dilemmas.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that really grabbed our attention from the material you sent in was this idea of choice. It's not about being the most naturally gifted witch or wizard, not about your family tree.
No, not at all. The analysis you provided makes it so clear that it's the choices the characters make, the paths they decide to take, that really shape who they become, much more than any inherent magical ability.
So for this deep dive, we really want to explore how J.K. Rowling uses her characters and the choices they make to show us that it's not our abilities that define us, but our actions. You sent in this really interesting exploration of choice in the Harry Potter books, and we're excited to discuss how Rowling brings this theme to life through her characters.
It's a theme that's there from the very beginning, too, is it? Right from the first page.
Absolutely. I mean, think about when Harry first learns he's a wizard. He's immediately given a choice to enter this new magical world or stay with the Dursleys. And yeah, the Dursleys were awful to him, but it was familiar.
Right, it was all he knew. That's such a crucial moment, though. It shows that he has agency. He's not just swept along by fate. He's actively making choices that shape his story right from the start.
And that's what makes him such a compelling character to examine through this lens of choice.
Hmm.
His entire journey is just a series of choices, each one leading to the next.
And it's interesting, too, because even his smaller, everyday choices build upon the big ones.
Oh, absolutely. Like his choice to be in Gryffindor.
Exactly. I mean, remember, the Sorting Hat saw potential in Harry that could have easily landed him in Slytherin. The documents you sent in point that out.
The hat saw ambition,
Yeah.
right? And resourcefulness,
Yeah.
qualities that we often associate with Slytherin. Even a touch of cunning, perhaps.
Right. But the crucial point is that Harry chooses Gryffindor. He actually voices his desire not to be in Slytherin, with its reputation for dark magic, and instead aligns himself with the values of bravery and friendship.
And this is where it gets really fascinating, I think. This choice, made by an 11-year-old on his first day at Hogwarts, lays the foundation for so much of what comes after. His bond with Ron and Hermione, his acts of courage, they all stem from that initial decision.
It's a perfect example of how these seemingly small choices can have such a huge ripple effect on a person's life. And of course, there are bigger choices too, like his constant decision to protect his friends.
Right. Over and over again, he puts himself in danger for Ron and Hermione. Facing Quirrell to protect the Sorcerer's Stone, going into the Chamber of Secrets even though it was incredibly dangerous, standing up to those Dementors.
It's like he's constantly making the conscious decision to be their shield. And as the material you shared highlights, even when he thought he was going to die in the Forbidden Forest, he still chose to protect everyone else. That selflessness, that willingness to sacrifice himself, that's what makes him a hero.
And then, think about his final decision concerning Snape. That's a really complex example of the power of choice.
It is. I mean, Snape had been so cruel to Harry for years. There were times when it seemed like Snape had betrayed him completely. But in the end, Harry chooses to forgive him.
Yeah, he comes to understand Snape's motivations and recognizes the sacrifice Snape ultimately made.
Which is huge when you think about it. Despite all the hurt and confusion, Harry chooses compassion. It shows how much he's grown, his ability to see beyond the surface and understand the burden of the choices Snape had made.
And that brings us to another incredibly important character whose choices drive the narrative, Albus Dumbledore.
Dumbledore. Often viewed as this wise, almost perfect figure. But the source material reminds us that he's not without flaws, right? He made mistakes in his past, and those mistakes definitely shaped his later decisions.
Oh, absolutely. Like his relationship with Grindelwald when he was younger. That whole period offers a fascinating insight into how someone so brilliant could be tempted by power and end up making terrible choices.
Right. And then there's this whole greater good philosophy. Your analysis of the documents pointed out how this idea led him to make some morally ambiguous decisions.
It's that classic question, isn't it? Do the ends justify the means? Because Dumbledore was convinced that his actions, even the ones that seemed manipulative or secretive, were all in service of the greater good. But it definitely makes you think about where the line is.
Yeah, what's ethical when you're trying to achieve something you believe is so important. And a key part of his strategy, this trust in Snape, that was a huge gamble.
It was. To put so much faith in a former Death Eater, that was a massive choice.
It really shows how strongly Dumbledore believed in redemption, in the possibility of change. And that choice to trust Snape despite the risks and what others thought, was absolutely crucial to Voldemort's defeat.
And even the way he guided Harry. Sometimes it seemed like he was holding back, keeping secrets. The material you sent in argues that this was a deliberate choice to prepare Harry for this incredibly difficult destiny, a destiny that even Dumbledore didn't fully comprehend.
Right, it was all about getting Harry ready for what was to come. And if we zoom out a little, we see that Dumbledore's choices, even the ones that seemed questionable, were all driven by this sense of responsibility for the entire wizarding world. He knew what was at stake, and he made some incredibly tough choices to try and protect everyone.
Now let's talk about the opposite of Harry in many ways. Voldemort. His choices are completely different, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Harry's choices are all about love, loyalty, and protecting the people he cares about. But Voldemort, he's driven by this insatiable need for power and a desperate desire to cheat death. Those are his driving forces, and they lead him down a very dark path.
The documents you shared really highlight the significance of his decision to create Horcruxes. That was a turning point for him, a descent into true evil.
Absolutely. To split your soul, to try and defy death by clinging to these fragments, that shows a complete rejection of what it means to be human. He sacrificed his own humanity for the sake of power and immortality.
And it wasn't just the Horcruxes. It was his constant choice to use violence and fear to get what he wanted, his complete lack of empathy, his belief that pure-blood wizards were superior to everyone else.
Exactly. Every choice he made showed this utter disregard for anyone but himself. He was willing to inflict pain and suffering without a second thought, just to achieve his goals. It's what makes him such a terrifying villain.
And probably the most telling thing, and the analysis you sent in points this out, is that he never showed any remorse. He never even considered choosing a different path.
Yeah, that inability to even contemplate redemption, it trapped him. It led to his downfall. He couldn't break free from that cycle of violence and isolation. It's a stark contrast to Harry, who was constantly choosing to fight for good, even when it was hard.
So we've seen how these individual choices shape destinies.
Yeah.
But the documents you provided also show us how this theme of choice plays out on a much larger scale within the wizarding world itself.
Yes, it's not just about individual heroes and villains. It's also about the choices made by institutions, like the Ministry of Magic. Their decisions reflect the values of the whole wizarding community.
Right, like their choices about laws and policies. Your analysis pointed out how those political choices had a huge impact on the course of events.
Well, think about how the Ministry initially refused to believe that Voldemort had returned. That choice, which was probably driven by fear and a desire to pretend everything was okay, had terrible consequences. It gave Voldemort time to gather strength and followers. It really shows how their political decisions directly impacted the safety of everyone in the wizarding world.
And it's not just the big political choices. The source material also looks at the Ministry's moral choices, especially when they were faced with difficult situations.
What's interesting is that their actions during those times of crisis really reveal their true values. Did they prioritize justice? Did they protect everyone equally? Or did they give in to fear and prejudice? Those choices speak volumes about their moral compass.
And then there's the whole wizarding community and the choices that individuals made. The material you sent in argues that those individual choices, when you add them all up, really shaped the kind of community the wizarding world became.
Right. It's the sum of all those everyday decisions that determines the moral fabric of a society. Do people stand up to injustice? Do they embrace those who are different? Or do they stay silent and let bad things happen?
You pointed out those brave individuals who chose to fight against Voldemort, even though it was incredibly dangerous. All those individual acts of courage, they formed the resistance.
And the people who chose to fight for acceptance and equality, like those working to improve the lives of house elves or werewolves, as the documents discuss, they were trying to make the wizarding world a better, more inclusive place. It shows that real change often starts with the choices of individuals.
So, as we come to the end of this deep dive into Harry Potter, inspired by the fascinating analysis you provided, it really drives home this message that it's not about your magical ability or your family name. It's about the choices you make, big and small, throughout your life. That's what truly defines who you are.
Exactly. We've talked about how choices shape individual destinies, how leaders have to grapple with complex ethical dilemmas, how choices rooted in darkness can be incredibly destructive, and how the choices of individuals can have a huge impact on society as a whole.
So as you think back on this deep dive in the theme of choice, what are some of the decisions in your own life that have really shaped who you are? And what do those choices say about the person you've become?
The idea of choice in the Harry Potter series is so rich and thought-provoking. We encourage you to go back and reread the books with this theme in mind. You might be surprised by what you discover.